Hey kids, it's Miss Hiller. We're going to see if we can get this to work today. I'm going to go over some of the PowerPoint about Unit 11 on intelligence. Let's see if we can pull this up. So I hope everybody is safe and doing well and not too bored. It's been rough, that's for sure. I miss you all. And this is the end of the new content. So the only two units that we didn't 100% finish that's going to be on the AP exam is going to be the Unit 10 on personality. We got halfway through that. And then this is Unit 11 on intelligence. So the way I used to teach this in class is that I would have the kids, before we introduce the unit, come up with their own definition for what they think intelligence is. And we know that it's a thing, but yet it's really hard to describe. And so if you think about that, how would you explain somebody, what is that aptitude that they have that we call intelligence? Is it the ability to understand, the ability to adapt, the ability to problem solve, whatever it might be? So according to your textbook, the definition is the ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and use knowledge to adapt to new situations. And this is the abbreviated version of the PowerPoint. You know how long they can get. So if you think about assessing intelligence, like how would you do that where it would be fair for everybody throughout the world? And the answer is you really can't. So if you look at this gentleman right here, in Cameroon's equatorial forest, intelligence may reflect understanding the medicinal qualities of local plants. Well, maybe a lot of us would come out being very unintelligent because we don't have this understanding, but they would view him in their society as being very intelligent. And so how do we in our Western society in the United States actually assess intelligence in a way that's not biased towards other people? Okay, so we may try to do this with factor analysis. So this is a statistical procedure that identifies clusters of related items called factors on a test. And so eventually people are going to come up with intelligence tests. And factor analysis is used to identify different dimensions of performance that underlie a person's total score. And so this is, of course, going to start out in a very sort of early and primitive way, maybe around the turn of the century, from the 19th to the 20th century. And there's going to be, lots of people weighing in and changing the way that we view intelligence. And we're still using intelligence tests today, and we use them at CHS. We'll use the adult version, the Wechsler adult test to assess intelligence. And if a child in the school division is younger, we'll use the Wechsler's children's version of the WISC test. Okay, so Charles Spearman is a researcher that studies intelligence, and he feels that there's this idea of general intelligence, that we can call it the G factor. And basically it's a belief that that there's this general aptitude of intelligence that underlies all mental abilities and is therefore measured by every task on an intelligence test. And so people are very athletic. And if you have somebody that's very athletic, yeah, they might be in the NBA, but chances are if you put them in a backyard football game or on the beach for a pickup volleyball game, that they're the ones that are still going to perform better than average because they just have athleticism. And the same is true of general intelligence. If you think about the kids who are excelling at CHS in our hardest classes, it's usually not that they're in the hardest English class, but they're in remedial math or vice versa. Chances are they're taking AP classes in many different subjects. And that's because they have general intelligence. And actually, when we see the opposite of that, that tends to be a red flag, and we usually test that kid for special services. For instance, if in all of their classes except math, they are excelling and working way below, above their grade level, then we would assess them for accommodations and special education services. Okay, so the idea of general intelligence is Spearman's. Thurston comes up with a counter argument, and he comes up with 7 clusters of primary mental abilities: word fluency, verbal comprehension, spatial abilities, perceptual speed, numerical, inductive reasoning, and memory. Okay, and that's all part of this G factor. Howard Gardner is another researcher, and he's going to say that there are 8 relatively independent intelligences, including verbal and mathematical aptitudes assessed by standardized tests. And there's the 8 categories right there. And this got a lot of play 30 years ago when I was in, teacher education courses, is that when we're planning lessons, we should be thinking about how can we tap into these different abilities, like spatial abilities, musical abilities, logical, mathematical abilities, linguistic abilities, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and the naturalist. And here it is right here, Howard Gardner. Okay, and here it is right here again, Howard Gardner's 8 multiple intelligences. And you can see, if you think about just, your average school day, chances are it's the linguistic and the logical mathematical intelligence that we're probably tapping into more than bodily kinesthetic intelligence. We don't require kids to take PE or sports or a dance class, as much as we require them to take English, math, or science or history classes. Okay, there's also the extremes of intelligence, and that can include someone that we would call a savant, who has incredible intellectual abilities in one area, but they might not be capable of independent living. And often, I think 80% of the time, savants are on the autism spectrum, but you can be a savant and not have autism. Okay, so what is savant syndrome? It's a condition in which a person, otherwise limited in mental ability, has the exceptional specific skills such as computation or drawing. They can be geniuses when it comes to playing the piano and picking it up by ear, having never been instructed in playing the piano, but yet in all of their other abilities, they might be working well below average. Okay, another theory of intelligence is Robert Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence. So you can see there's going to be 3 components here. Analytic intelligence, mental processes used in learning how to solve problems. Creative intelligence, the ability to deal with novel situations by drawing on existing skills and knowledge. And practical intelligence is the ability to adapt to the environment, someone that has street smarts. So if you find yourself in a third world country and you're homeless and you're able to start your own business, shining shoes, that would be maybe a sign of practical intelligence. Okay, so you have Spearman's, the idea of the G factor, general intelligence, Thurston's 7 factors, and again, they're coming up with a single G score that represents these 7 factors. Gardner's multiple intelligences, he's concentrating on these 8 independent types of intelligences. And Sternberg's triarchic theory is where he's looking at analytical, creative, and practical intelligence. And practical intelligence is not often talked about when we talk about intelligence. So that's what's a little bit different about Sternberg's theory, is that he's actually giving credit to people who have an aptitude to be able to adapt quickly, sort of in unusual circumstances. Okay. All right, just remember that. Grit in psychology, grit is passion and perseverance in the pursuit of long-term goals. Success is not a one ingredient recipe. High intelligence may help you get into a good college and ultimately a desired profession, but won't make you successful once you're there. So it's a combination of talent and perseverance, diligence, conscientiousness, and that idea of grit. And when you apply to college, they're looking not only at signs of your intelligence, but signs that you have like that stick-to-itness that allows you to keep on going. Okay, interesting enough, employers are becoming more and more in tune to the importance of emotional intelligence. And they're putting a little bit more weight towards that than maybe actual like IQ assessments. Because if you think about it, if you're emotionally mature and emotionally intelligent, then you're going to be able to get along with people better and get along in the workplace better. So emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions. Oh, I have a typo there. Women are slightly better at this than men, although the sexes or the genders are going to experience emotion in the same way. But women seem to be a little bit more in tune to understanding their emotions and the emotions of others. So emotional intelligence involves perceiving emotions, understanding emotions, managing emotions, and using emotions for adaptive or creative thinking. Okay, so now we're getting to assessing intelligence. What is an intelligence test? So this is a method for assessing an individual's mental aptitudes and comparing them with those of others using numerical scores. So we classify these intelligence tests as either achievement tests or aptitude tests. So an achievement test, okay, on later in May, you're going to be taking this AP exam. That's an achievement test. It's supposed to test what you have learned in this class. An aptitude test is intended to predict your ability to learn a new skill. So you might take the ASVAB test, which is the military aptitude test, and it's going to give them an idea of what you might be able to handle in the future when you take a job in the military. I took the ASVAB aptitude test. It was required for all of us kids back in high school, and the only thing I remember about my results was that they thought that I would make a good electrician or electrical engineer. I don't know why. What is the difference between an achievement test and an aptitude test? Well, again, achievement tests are exams covering what you have learned. In this course, there are achievement tests. You've been taking them all along. Every unit quiz, every unit test, okay, the midterm, and the AP exam, like I said, these are achievement tests. You're going to be tested on what you've learned in class. An aptitude test, that could be maybe a college entrance exam, a test to predict your future performance. Okay, so what's the origins of intelligence testing? So Francis Galton did some intelligence testing before the turn of the century, measuring natural ability, and he looked at reaction time, sensory acuity, muscular power, body proportions. Again, a lot of this has nothing to do with intelligence, but the first time you try to figure it out, you're looking at almost everything. And Galton was a cousin of Charles Darwin, and Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, had a heavy influence on Galton's thinking, which led him to his theory of accelerated human evolution through selective eugenics, sort of like breeding for certain traits, which could be intelligence as well. Okay, when things really start becoming a little bit more modern is with Alfred Binet. And basically he's in France and he wants to identify students that are struggling in the French school system that may need extra help. And so he's going to come up with an assessment, an achievement test. And he's going to look at mental age. So Binet says that, you need a level of performance typically associated with the children of a certain age. So he's looking at your chronological age. So if you're chronologically, you're 10 years old, what would be the typical performance cognitively for someone that's 10 years old? So, and if you are both 10 and you are performing like a typical 10-year-old cognitively, intellectually, then it all matches up. And you're going to have this average IQ score, which it tends to be 100. Okay, so what is meant by mental age?